Here we go. Okay. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so I'm gonna like ask for a volunteer to maybe coming first. But I just wanted to like also set a more general context, because as you all know, or if we still remember, that we had Brexit not that long ago, and there are a number of regulations around air pollution that came from the European Union. I'm no expert into that. Some people in the room have got far more expertise into it. But obviously, with the exit from the European Union, there are some regulations that are no longer valid or are being reviewed as part of some governmental activities. And I know there is like currently a national consultation about new air pollution guidelines, that there may be some concern about them being maybe not as important as the previous one, or they may not like cover certain areas properly. So if you've got some knowledge about that, feel free to also share that with the group, because I think it's relevant for everybody. I also want to point out that for a number of campaigns that people are participating to, there may be more than one air pollution source that is of concern. But quite often, if we campaign, for example, against airports, yes, there are air pollution that is related to planes activity, but quite often expansion of airports also bring more activities around the airport, more traffic around that. And that's something we've seen again and again. You know, if you've got a new incinerator, then you will have more traffic because you'll have lorries carrying materials in and out of the incinerator. And, you know, similarly, if you campaign against a new road project, often that project will be linked to another infrastructure, not directly linked to your campaign, but that, you know, is likely to increase the traffic, or the infrastructure is being created to allow traffic to flow through that area. So hopefully I gave everybody enough time to gather their thoughts. And I'm wondering if there is a volunteer that may want to start with presenting their campaign. And if there isn't one, I will put somebody on the spot. Okay. So Steph, I'm sorry, but we've done quite a lot of work with Ogletshore, and we've actually got an air pollution working group as well. So is it okay if I ask you to maybe start a little bit with the Ogletshore, but I also know that you've got more general points to make, so I'll bring you in if that's okay.
Yes, okay. I got interested in air pollution about 3 years ago when Steve Rotherham had a big conference in one of the universities in Liverpool. And then in August last year, I had the opportunity of asking the mayor directly on a Zoom meeting about what he was doing in air pollution, because in the Liverpool city region plan, he said in the plan that he endorsed that he wanted an empirically based method of identifying air pollution, which would drive the actions to deal with it. So I said to him, what's the plan? We already know from a report done by King's College London where there are hotspots in Liverpool from air pollution. So shouldn't we be installing air pollution monitors there to see which is the worst, and then to focus that on those areas and gradually, you know, roll out a scheme for Liverpool? And he started floundering a bit, and then his principal officer for the environment, Kate Waggett, she interrupted and asked me to have a meeting with her afterwards. I had that meeting, and 6 weeks later, the mayor announced by email to all the councils in Liverpool City region that they had acquired 37 specialist monitors that monitor PM 2.5 as well as nitrogen dioxide, and they were going to be installed on traffic lights, because the DEFRA recommendation is that the monitors should be as close as possible to the source of pollution. They use the word anthropogenic source. But there were only 37 monitors, and where I live in the Wirral, we had 7 of them out of the 37, and the others, were scattered around. So the mayor, I think, has an ambivalent conviction towards air pollution. I subsequently asked Wirral Council what they were doing, and they're gradually introducing areas around schools where at drop-off and pick-up times the traffic has been restricted, and now that's starting to roll out right across Liverpool now, very gradually. But again, they're not using their monitoring data, they're just doing it intuitively. So Rotherham and the councils need to be brought back to the point that they need to measure and act on that measurement, not just do things to create jobs or whatever first, but to identify the health risks. So but that was what I was doing before I got involved with the OGRA group, which was a bit of an accident in a way. But I started off with the OGRA group by giving them a presentation on air pollution based on researches that have been done that identified the risks besides lung and cardiovascular disease. There was a risk to, for Alzheimer's and all sorts of other neurological conditions. And following that, I wrote to the mayor of Liverpool City Council in January, identifying the research and saying that in their draft plan, they did want to combat carbon dioxide emissions, which meant that you weren't going to expand the airport unless you're going to have more aircraft coming. And also the need to monitor. In Liverpool Council, there's a chap called Dooley who works on in the environmental group in City Council, and he gave me quite a thick report on the data of what they call passive diffusion tubes, which measure nitrogen dioxide, and there's 140 of them across Liverpool. And what I was able to do was to identify the routes to the airport and see what the data was from the monitors on the way to the route. And identified, as we got closer to the airport, there were some quite serious areas of overpollution. Some of them were about 400% over the World Health Organization recommendations. And one of them is near a play school in Cressington. So I used that data to put this question I did to the consultative committee for Liverpool Airport in February. That was their back reaction, that they were going to do this proper survey, because around Liverpool Airport, the ward of Speak Garston is one of the most deprived in the UK and has a very high incidence of cardiovascular and respiratory disease. So there's a strong case there for controlling pollution. And going forward, I put it in the chat that around ports, there needs to be a scheme, a proper scheme to reduce pollution. And in the chat, I put in a link to San Diego port, where they have quite seriously strong regulations coming into force over the next 5 years to restrict certain types of heavy goods vehicles and traffic to keep pollution away from the communities near San Diego. And that's quite useful. It's a pity that Kate Fuller isn't here, but I'll try and get a copy to her later. But there's a big PDF report as well as the website link. So going forward, I think we're on a sort of hold now because Liverpool City Council has frozen the progress to expand the airport. And I can't find out from the councillors what they are doing at this stage and when they're going to consider any planning applications or new sets of guidance for the airport if they want to expand. So that's my piece.
Thanks, Steph. That's great. And, I think you've already shared some very interesting information. Anybody else would like to come in? Yeah, we've lost Kate, unfortunately, which, oh, she's back. I propose we don't put Kate on the spot straight away, and she seemed to be coming back in and out. So maybe Katie, I know you're not super well, but I'm just wondering in terms of, can you tell us a little bit more about the extracts and, you know, the link with different type of pollutions that, you know, maybe about air pollution from the station, but also the wood pellets, I understand, you know, like problematic for communities and workers in different places. And maybe like tell us how air pollution may have been a feature, if it has, in your campaign. All right?
Yeah. So kind of air pollution features kind of along the supply chain, and I'll sort of like try and do a bit of a whistle stop tour really. So over on the other side of the Atlantic, where the bulk of the pellets that Drax burns are sourced in the southern US, the pellets are processed, you know, from wood into pellets at these pellet mills that tend to be sited in it like poor areas, communities of colour, and there's health impacts. People have, you know, all the associated health problems. It's like films of dust on people's cars. They were fined, I think, successfully in Mississippi last year because of air pollution. Obviously they're brought by ship. Well, as pollution comes out the ships, but then the dust from the wood pellets, we've heard from people inside the port that there's health impacts from exposure to wood dust within the ports, but we've not got that concretely yet. But there are some workers. The health and safety executive is taking Drax to court over, we think it's exposure to wood dust. In terms of, and then there's just like the general port pollution, which obviously if they're bringing, you know, loads of these wood pellets, it's just kind of like, it's taking up the port's capacity, so it's just contributing to the general pollution associated with the port. It's quite tricky when it comes to Drax itself, which is the power station in Selby, North Yorkshire. It's the biggest carbon emitter in the UK. It burns these wood pellets. It's really hard to get the air pollution, the sort of monitoring data, because that whole region is so industrially polluted that it's very hard to kind of separate out what's from Drax. And also because the towers are so high, the pollution from Drax is very much downwind of where it's based. I have something. Oh, but also as well as the big biomass, we have been looking into, there's some research been done that kind of small scale, you know, wood burning stoves, and this is sort of, you know, not great politically in a way, because it's nice to be able to just take aim at the big power stations, but you know, wood burners are a large source of air pollution in cities. And it's actually, you mentioned Mums for Lungs, it's one of the kind of main areas that they want to focus on. And obviously they're like the chimneys on houses are much lower than, you know, Drax's huge chimney stacks. So we've actually been, as an organisation, my colleague has been trying to set up a campaign on air pollution and been in touch with Mums for Lungs and some other groups, but it's still in the very sort of initial stages. But yeah, one of the things that we kind of highlighting in support of the Rimrose campaign is that you know, the rail freight from the port is the preferred, you know, option to the road freight, but a lot of the rail freight is clogged up with these pellets. So it's sort of quite a sort of like a holistic, the different aspects of how it relates. But yeah, it's definitely a part of our campaigning. And it's great to kind of have a meeting dedicated to it, to sort of connect with other people specifically. I think that's everything I can think of for now.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, and I think I did ask the question about those trains are diesel trains that also like take the wood pallet to Drax. And I don't know if it's you who told me it was, or if it was another campaigner, but I think like it's well possible there are diesel trains. And I think it's really interesting that if we could use those train tracks to carry some other goods from the port to their destination, then it may be that we wouldn't need a road through Rimrose Valley to transport this. So I think that's really interesting. And as we know, the port is owned by Peel, the airport is owned by Peel, and it seems that this Peel is coming back into a number of infrastructure challenges in Merseyside. I think Kate is back with us, and hopefully you were able to catch some of those comments. And I'm wondering, Kate, if at this point you would like to maybe come in for the Rimrose Valley at this stage, and then maybe we'll give you a break, bring somebody else in, and between you and me, hopefully we can cover the Simons Woods incinerator as well.
Yeah,
You ready?
Yeah, so I did miss a little bit of that. I did have some connectivity issues, so apologies for that. But I assume it's sort of plans of action. Is that where we're up to going forward? What we've saw, or solutions, potential solutions? Is that?
I think at this stage we're more like sort of giving a bit of an overview of your campaign and how air pollution comes in a little bit more details. And have you done any specific work on either air pollution monitoring, or have you done any particular campaigning on that topic with your group, or have you linked up with other groups on the issue of air pollution that you may want to share with us?
Only sort of, again, through, yourselves, how much things cross over. And it's really good that everyone's aware of each other's issues and can, chip into, each other's problems with it. But basically, what we noticed in Sefton, this is just something that I sort of took on myself to looking into, was Sefton's website. They've got the figures that are all available online. So they have sort of real-time information of, the pollutant levels throughout the day, so hourly readings are recorded onto the system. But then each time they were coming back as green and low pollution. But then when you look at the figures and you start to pick apart and you start to see the figures for 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and you realise they're like, over 100 parts per billion for NOx or whatever it might be, quite regular, going like quite far up the scale, then reducing as it was in the day when things settle down, and then again picking up around 3, 4, 5 o'clock. So each time when children were walking to school and back, so it's like, hey, we live in Sefton and our air quality is good. However, when the children are walking to school at that particular time along these busy routes, which there's quite an awful lot of schools surrounding Rimrose Valley. I think there's about 20 schools in like the 1 mile radius of it. And that's primary schools as well, sort of right on it. And sorry I didn't quite explain before, but Rimrose Valley is obviously, it's a massive green space. It's 300 acres of green space in like a very urbanized area. So when you stood at Rimrose Valley, you can see all of the cranes of the port. It's like it's in the backdrop of it. So it literally sits on the port. So there's 90,000 people again who live in that area in a 1 mile radius. So it's, a lot of people affected. So basically, when I started looking at the figures for the time of the school, I realised that there was no PM 2.5 monitor installed in Sefton anywhere whatsoever. So I contacted Sefton Council. I had sort of quite a lot of contact back and forward with them, and they said that one would be installed. So when they said it was going to be 6 months to the date, I was like, hi, it's me again, just checking that you've installed that monitor you said you were going to, and then they hadn't. So I kept pushing and pushing for it. That is installed now, and it's sort of quite regular. Again, you can sort of keep a watch on it, and the numbers sort of creep up quite a lot. There is a lot of gaps in the data as well. So I think that's how they get away with averaging out on a green sort of level, because there's a lot of information that isn't there. So without that information, it sort of sways the figures a little bit. So what we were hoping to do as part of our campaign is do some crowdfunding potentially to get our own air quality monitor installed in one of the very busy transit routes, you know, like for HGVs, which is Princess Way or Church Road. So we were looking into them. It's about £10,000 that we were hoping to sort of potentially crowdfund for. So yeah, that's sort of, you know, where I got with it myself. But Sefton's air quality monitoring at the minute, it seems to be very different from other ones I've came across. So when I was looking at Sefton's, I was like comparing it to other ones in, like, you know, Liverpool city region, and they did not seem as accurate, if you like, as the Sefton ones. They did actually say they were looking to upgrade or improve them. So, you know, whether the accuracy sort of gets taken away or not, I don't know. But it's quite an interesting thing to look at, because, like I say, it splits it up and gives you the figures in hourly readings, and it's called Breathing Space, Sefton's Breathing Space, if anyone wants to have a look at that.
Brilliant, thank you, Kate. And what we said as well is, if people want to share links into the chat, you know, I will include them into a summary of this discussion. And I think we are a smaller group today as well, so the time for like breaking out and, you know, maybe like focus about what action we could do, probably we won't have as much time. I think it's really interesting to hear from the different perspective and the different points that are very important about what type of particles are monitored or not, you know, where those air monitors are situated. And a number of groups have been thinking about purchasing air monitors, but, you know, it shouldn't be us having to do that. But sometimes we may be forced to do so, but hopefully we can also lobby politicians to have better monitoring of the air quality.
We have actually got a meeting, just to jump in on that quickly, we have got a meeting set up with the lead for environmental health. So that's coming up soon, and a few different cabinet ministers or whatever. So, and that's to do with air pollution. So I can obviously, once that happens, I'll keep you updated on what happens there as well, such as Sefton.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's great. I'm going to bring you back in a moment as well about Simon's Wood, because I know you've been like starting some work around air pollution monitoring. But I also want to bring in Sue. But before I do so, I'm just going to give a chance to other people who haven't spoken yet, if they want to contribute. And you don't have to at this stage if you don't want to, but I'm wondering, Rakesh, did you have any thoughts or, you know, anything you wanted to contribute at this stage that you are aware Friend of the Earth are working on?
No, I have nothing at the moment. It's good to hear about everyone's campaigns.
Thank you. Liz, did you have any thought you want to share? And, you know, I know you say you like to be a bit of a sponge today, but as a medical professional, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about that.
I'm sort of aware, but not very linked into a couple of. I went to a really interesting talk by a pediatric consultant who I think is really on the ball about this. That another woman who's very involved with sustainable GP practices. So I think there's a little bit of work, and it feels like it would be good to try and link interested doctors who are already involved and have an understanding of how it impacts on children. But I'm not sure, maybe Mums for Lungs are doing some of that, trying to make some of those links, but I'm not quite sure. But that was just going through my mind, thinking as we were talking about it.
And I don't think it's been mentioned yet, but recently there's been the tragic case of this young girl who's like 9 years old, Ella Adukisi-Debra, who's living near the South Circular Road in Lewisham, in Southeast London. And, you know, she had asthma and she died in 2013, and it's taking so many years. But recently there was an inquest that found that air pollution made a material contribution to her death. And so there is also, you know, that aspect, and really affecting children even more than adults. So I'm sure like there may be people coming back on this issue, but it's becoming more evident that, you know, air pollution is having a massive impact on people's health, and there've been reports about the number of deaths across the world that are related to air pollution, which is actually endemic. And I don't think we've got the right research and information about what's exactly going on, and certainly not in Merseyside. I'm not aware of, you know, specific research that have been done on this. And another element that is interesting is that there are also links with, you know, the poorest communities, often the most affected by pollution because of, you know, the location of where people live who are poor, often near, you know, motorway or large road infrastructure or other type of infrastructure. And therefore, you know, the sort of pollution discriminates, if you like, about who is affected and who is disproportionately affected. Yeah, sorry, Liz, did you want to?
No, it's okay. The other sort of circular bit, it's a bit like the it's a bit like the power stations and the wood chip, but you have asthma and then you use an inhaler, and the inhaler has an impact on the ozone. So what you try and do to ameliorate the problem for the individual actually adds to the total problem. You know, it is so, the whole thing is so complicated that it makes activism on a, you know, single point really difficult, I think. But doesn't mean we should stop and not do it, but it's yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. And of course, air pollution, you know, is linked to climate change, but is also, you know, sort of concern on its own. So the multiple crises that, you know, the current society is creating are related. I'm just going to give a chance for Hilary if you wanted to say anything, contribute at this stage. You're happy to.
I'll just say that the problem is such a mammoth and huge thing going on for many, many years. How can you begin to do anything about it? You know, it seems an extraordinarily difficult thing to sort out now, doesn't it?
Okay, well, I'm going to bring Sue because, you know, she's a policy and campaign officer for the Asthma and Lung Foundation, and they've been doing work over the years. So maybe, Sue, if you want to come in, maybe react to some of the things you've heard, but also, you know, share some of the information or campaigns that are already taking place, or some of the initiatives that, you know, are rising. I'll bring you in.
Yeah, thanks. Really interesting to hear everyone's perspectives. I know of some of the campaigns quite well, and I've been involved in different ways over the years. I've been doing this work for about 5 years, and I'm the policy and campaigns officer, but my specialist subject is air quality. So I'm a bit of an air quality geek, so I'll try and be succinct. I think my first reaction is really about, it is a massive issue. It's been a massive issue for absolutely years and years and years, and air quality hasn't really improved. So the approach that we've taken at Asthma and Lung UK, we used to be Asthma UK and British Lung Foundation, just in case that's more familiar to you, but we've joined forces now, which is brilliant. So we kind of like, you get two for the price of one. Is that we have commissioned a number of reports over the years to try and work out, you know, how you do sort of approach this massive topic. Now, we're a health charity. We make no bones about that. We don't apologise for that. So our first approach, and the reason we got into this, was because we support people with asthma and long-term lung conditions, which is the third biggest killer in this country. And yet some minuscule amount of money of budgets research, government research funding is actually spent on it. And there just hasn't been any progress when you compare to the likes of cancer and other things. So we wanted to do more work around prevention, and obviously air quality impacted on people with lung conditions. But you know, we also know that it causes lung conditions and all the things that people have spoken about. So we have put in the chat links to a number of reports. One of the things I'll just very briefly mention nationally is that we lead on a national lung health task force, which is air quality features large in that, but it also integrates into care pathways around people with lung health. But I'm not going to talk about that because that's not that relevant today. I have put a link in to a report we published last year, which was called The Invisible Threat. And what that does is it kind of breaks down into manageable chunks the things that we probably need to do at policy level to actually start to tackle this multifaceted problem. So have a read of that. It's very readable, and we used insights from user groups. We, you know, crunch data and things like that. So that's a useful one. In terms of research across Liverpool City region, we commissioned the King's College research, which specifically looked at the impact of air quality on health and the economy. And that very much concluded the whole thing about the social injustice. And that's, we're just commissioning, thank you very much. We're just commissioning another report at the moment, which is going to look at vulnerable groups and things. So my role at Asthma and Lung UK is a bit different, as I said before, because they've kind of invested in my role to make sure that all the actions and things aren't all like London centric. And my role, I suppose, is to translate national, regional and local policy, and to act as a bit of a catalyst to support existing groups, maybe helping new groups set up where there aren't groups, and just generally trying to, I think I'd start using all stupid analogies, I can't help it, but to kind of oil the cogs a bit really in terms of getting things going on the ground. So over the years, done a range of things from engagement events, Q&A sessions, we've taken over cinemas, and we've done lots of things, but just focusing on Merseyside and our plans over the coming months, there are two big ticket items for us. One is the clean air zone. Now that only covers Liverpool City Council region. I don't know, I'm not going to go on about clean air zones, apart from saying they are an initiative to get the most polluting vehicles off the most polluting roads in the shortest possible time. They are evidence-based, but they work on the basis of modelling and projections, and it does flag up the issue about not having accurate data, which I think is a really core issue. So that's something certainly that we'll be getting involved with on the ground, looking potentially to have an air quality summit later on in the year. And our focus for that and for my work is really focusing on pollution that comes from vehicles. You know, it is a huge issue, but we've got to take it chunk by chunk. So that's very much my focus, is around air pollution from vehicles. So the Clean Air Zone is going to be a campaign which I would like to try and get grassroots organisations from right across the region involved, because, you know, Liverpool's at the heart of this region, and every other local authority has a boundary with it. So I think to just look at one local authority in isolation isn't the right way of doing it. So that's something that I'll be back in touch with. The other thing is the local elections that are coming up. There are no local elections in Liverpool this year for reasons which, well, they just aren't. They're redefining the ward boundaries. So next year is going to be a really, really big year for Liverpool, because every single councillor will be up for re-election. So I think we could get a really good campaign going. which I'm looking to start now, to lobby all the councillors now to kind of get them to raise air quality. And that's something, again, as grassroots organisations with an interest in air quality, be great if you could help me do that. And then the other thing is that where there are local elections across Liverpool City region, we're doing some action. We are targeting Sefton. Kate, you'll be interested to know, because we do know that there are particular air quality problems in Sefton, and I've been involved with Rimrose for a number of years myself, and other campaigners in Sefton. Excuse me. So we are going to be holding a hustings on the 26th April, and I haven't got the Eventbrite ready yet, but if it's possible to share the Eventbrite, that would be great once that's up and ready. That's going to be chaired by Professor Callum Semple, who you may well know from COVID, being a key member of SAGE, and he was on the telly quite a lot. We've done quite a lot of work with Callum. He's got particular research interest in Sefton, and he's also a paediatric respiratory consultant at Alder Hay. So he's really happy to host the meeting. And I'm contacting the leaders of all the political groups across Sefton, and it would be great to get as many people there. We're going to be calling for people to submit questions. It's going to be online, so which I think will work quite well. So if you want to put a holder in your diaries for 26th of April, running from, I think it's from 6:30 till 8 off the top of my head, but I will send invites out. But that would be really great. And then another local election action that we're doing locally is I've devised a candidates quiz, which is basically a really simple survey monkey, which I would like people to send out to their local candidates right across the region. I've got a volunteer at the moment who is busily, as we speak, identifying who all those candidates are, because they were all declared last week, and getting their Twitter handles. So that'll be available for people to share widely. And I think it'll just be really interesting. And we're asking the key questions about what do they know about air pollution in their ward? What do they know about how it is the legal limits and the healthy limits? And also what they know about how air quality is measured, where in their wards, the impact it has on health and the impact it has on the economy. And then finally give them, and also we want to analyse this by ward and also by political party. So that will be a really interesting, quite light touch way to flag up air quality, which after the elections, those who are successful, we can contact them again, or as campaigners, you can contact them again, ask them what they're actually going to do now while they're elected. And those people who aren't successful, which there'll be a lot more than aren't, are natural campaigners, and hopefully we will have whetted their appetite to kind of get on board with this really, really important issue in the future. So although I do come from a national organisation, it means that we've got lots of resources, and I can help you to influence what research and what we need doing. We're tied into the Healthy Air Coalition. One of my colleagues is sitting on the DEFRA review of air quality monitoring, because they've recognised now that it's just not good enough. So it's quite, I think I'm quite a useful resource, both in terms of those bigger picture stuff, the local policy, but also kind of like practical stuff on the ground. And, you know, if people have got ideas about how they want to get involved in air quality campaigning, you know, often we can support that. So, for example, at COP, we had a stand, but we were able to fund a group of 15 young people from a youth centre just off Lodge Lane in, you know, a really quite deprived area of Liverpool, for them all to go to COP for the day, and they're now all fundraising because they want to go to the next COP, which is in Egypt. So although I'm not a grassroots campaigner, I am here to support people in grassroots groups, both practically but with information. So my last plug is we've just set up a Facebook group, which I would really like to be managed by local campaigners. But on that, I'm going to put lots of links and things on there with resources that you might want to use. And I will put the link up actually before I finish talking. In terms of the stuff with the Healthy Air Coalition, we work really closely with Mums for Lungs, Living Streets, Sustrans. We do work with Medact. So I'm a good kind of link in to wider things. But what we find with a lot of other national organisations, they haven't invested in a resource to be able to do the role that I do. And we've just now funded another person like me to expand our role because we found it's been really successful in other places. I hope that wasn't too long, and I hope it kind of gives a bit of a flavour of, you know, how I'm kind of here to support. But my main focus is definitely around pollution from vehicles. I'm not saying that other pollution isn't important, of course it is, but if we can tackle that, it leaves more resources to be able to tackle some of the things that may be a bit more difficult.
Thanks, Sue. Now, I think lots of important stuff, and you know, I'm mainly concerned about, you know, running out of time tonight because I like so much to say, and I want to also keep a little bit of time to say, okay, what next steps we can take from this conversation, which, you know, is only the start. I've got a couple of hands up, and you know, I'm gonna give you a chance to come back. We didn't have anybody from Simons Woods incinerator, but I think that we probably don't want to go into too much details on that. We'll share the Facebook page, and there are similar issues we've already mentioned about, you know, the sort of air pollution that is directly linked to the incinerator, but also to the vehicles linked to that infrastructures. And I know that they've got an action taking place on the 30th of April. So I don't know if air pollution is going to feature into that. But also when I was chatting to them and the national organization UK Without Incineration last week, they were saying that air pollution has never been successful in terms of planning objections to stop an incinerator. I think that that's something that's interesting where, you know, when you object on project via the planning system, air pollution, despite being so important, it doesn't seem to be something that you can really use as an objection, which is really worrying. So I'm going to bring people in, but also if you've got any events coming up that you'd like to flag up with the groups in relation to your campaign, I think this is the time to make that point because we've only got 20 minutes left. So I'm going to bring people back in for the next 10 minutes and then keep 10 minutes at the end to maybe look at what next steps we could take. And clearly Sue has got quite a few initiatives coming up quite quickly, and I'm sure everybody will be able to share them with their network and take part into that. But there may be other ideas and opportunities that can arise in the next 2 to 3 months that we may want to, or even this month that we may want to flag up. So I've got Steph and then Rakesh, and then I think Katie, I know that Drax have got their AGM coming up, so maybe I can bring you in so you can mention when that is and what other groups are doing for that. Okay, so Steph.
Yeah, just a quick suggestion to Sue on the MailChimp study. It'd be worth asking the councillors if they know their ward profile in terms of community health, because that is very relevant to air pollution. So I would suggest that as a question is added on that. That's it.
Thanks, Steph. Rakesh?
Thanks. So there's one thing that Friends of the Earth are doing, which is going to be a right to a healthy environment campaign, but that's a couple of months away. The other thing I wanted to say was, Sue, I'm quite interested in the stuff that you're doing more nationally for other groups that we support. So it would really be good to hear about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's great. Just drop me an email. We can talk, Rakesh. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks. And yes to Steph's suggestion.
Thank you. Katie, do you want to flag up the AGM of drugs coming up and tell us, like what action are taking place?
Yeah, so Drax's AGM is coming up on the 27th of April. It's a Wednesday. The AGM tends to be a big focus for campaigning against Drax, and in the past we've done sort of solidarity demos at the port, because that's where a lot of the pellets come through. Its AGM is actually taking place in London this year, coinciding with a 3-day bioenergy conference. So there's going to be lots of action down there, and then there's going to be actions across the north. I think Hull, Leeds, York, possibly Calder, and it'd be great to kind of, yeah, like do a demo at the port, kind of as we have in previous years, but with anybody's ideas, input, linking it in with like local issues, Rimrose, air pollution. So yeah, if anyone's interested in getting involved with that, or just turning up, yeah, it'd be really great to hear from people now or later if people want to get in touch.
That's on the 28th of April.
It's the 27th, so it's the day after the hustings. And the AGM is taking place at midday. I'm not sure. I think we'd probably just do it kind of when on the day would suit really.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time that I've been like quite keen to try to, make the links between the different campaigns, between like the Peel port and the Peel sort of presence in Liverpool, the Rimrose Valley, the sort of like drugs dimension, and it would be great. I mean, myself, I'm not in the country, but it'd be great to get like a small group of people to come together on the day and have a little bit of a presence that could highlight the different campaigns and the sort of air pollution dimension. You may all know as well that there's been the P&O sort of campaign taking place with, I think it was like, was it 100 workers? It was 800 workers in total, but I'm not sure in Liverpool how many there were, but there've been like a number of protests, and we've been mentioning about the sort of impact of pollution on port workers as well. So it may be a good opportunity to link up to those workers and start to create links with port workers and climate justice, which I think is very important. So I mean, I'm more than happy to try to help organize a small protest, although I won't be there on the day. But if there is a bit of interest from people on this group, we could go back to the COP coalition as well and do like a follow-up, like planning meeting to do something. So yeah, I'll just pause at this stage and see if there is interest in people present there to maybe pick up that conversation outside this meeting to see if we could have a small presence at the port on that day. If we can't do it on that day, then we could do it later as well. But that could be like quite nice to have a bit of a start.
I'm up for it.
Anybody else may be interested, or maybe interested to like put it to their group?
If there's only going to be a couple, I don't know, we can maybe try and think of something, I don't know. So if it's just going to be a couple of us, Katie, I don't know whether you'd be into, you know, if you're going to come to the port or whatever, then obviously, you know, we'd love to try and get there. But maybe we could think of something, I don't know. Is anyone else coming? Do you know, Katie? Like, would they?
Well, I think like generally we have had a handful of people, and
Yeah.
I have sort of held off on kind of organising because I knew that this meeting was going to come as a bit of an opportunity. But I'm in the Socialist Singers, and I have spoken to Socialist Singers, and they are up for coming on the day to sing. So that's a little.
That would be fun. Yeah, that'd be good.
And I think if we've got, you know, if we've got a little core, then we can put it out a bit wider and see if we can get, you know, get a few more people. And I think it would be good. I mean, because I'm doing quite a lot of different things, but if I don't know, Clara, like you're not around, but if like physically, but if, I mean, what do we think about coming up with like a leaflet that kind of weaves everything together, and maybe you could help with that, even if you know,
Yeah.
I think we did produce something. Oh, that was it. We produced. It was like this zine thing, which brought in. It was a national thing, but it brought in Rimrose and Save Log Workshore and maybe. I think. Yeah. Actually, it was the. When it was the end, the train of destruction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
So it'd be good to put together a leaflet bringing the different campaigns together that we could use on the day, but also, you know, afterwards.
Yeah.
We've also got some umbrellas that if we had, you know, enough people, we can use some umbrellas to put a message on and, you know, have some visual that we can amplify on social media. But yeah, I'd be up for helping for where I am. And I think that there may be some people interested. So maybe we could like try to get another conversation going after this meeting. And like try to get a few people to come along and trash out some of those ideas to see if we can put something, even if it's quite small, that will be quite symbolic and, you know, start some collaborations.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that'd be an action point we can follow up on and try to pull something together. I've also like noticed that in June there is a Clean Air Day. And, you know, I'm not usually a massive fan of those, you know, big national days, but that may actually be a useful focus and give us more time to bring more group together to do something. And, you know, it's not necessarily a protest. It can be like outreach to different community groups as well, because I know like Stephanie, when we're like having a conversation about air pollution, you were also pointing out that some communities like Kensington and I can't remember other areas that you have pointed out that, you know, like were really affected by air pollution, and it may be an opportunity to bring new people on board with some of the different campaigns that we are involved in already. So yeah, just a thought that could be a nice sort of follow-up in a few months' time, giving us a little bit more time to do something in between to gather a few more people. Because we had 22 people registered for it, and it's only 8 of us who ended up being able to make it. So I think there is some interest into that. So yeah, that's something I'd be keen to help following up. Okay. Any other events that people would like to highlight, or any other thought you'd like to share with the group at this stage?
Nothing really coming up for it. We've got sort of, you know, stalls at events, but there's nothing really, you know, planned action. One thing we did actually speak about last week at our meeting was just sort of maybe us as our small team dressing up and like sort of going to the port, you know, like animals, so like, you know, squirrels, hedgehog, you know, just like, even if it was something just silly, just have like a little laugh. We were talking about doing some kinds of funny protests like outside the port or whatever. But the other thing as well, what I mentioned would be a good photo opportunity, if you like, is if you're in New Brighton. I don't know if you've been there quite recently, and you can think what it looks like when you look at the port. I think if you had enough of you and you were clever, you could sort of hold your banners up and block out the cranes and block out the whole port. So really, it's not really there, if you like. I think it would look quite effective with banners and things from that side of the water, where the port's at the back of you. You can see the whole operation. It's quite spectacular when you look at it, you know, it's because the sheer size in it, you know, it's horrible. Like, I don't like it, it's imposing, but you can see everything from that side of the water. So
yeah, another little idea for, you know, future actions that could be looked at. Okay. And I think also,
I think Katie, just to reiterate that as well, when you go over there and you look over, you can actually see a haze over Sefton, most definitely. You can see that horrible kind of blue haze of pollution. So it's another photo I've taken some photos of, actually. And I've actually got some prints going back maybe 150 years that I've got, so you can see exactly the same thing. So it might be, that might be an interesting kind of publicity thing, but anyway, talk offline.
so we've got a few things that are coming up in terms of lobbying politicians that, you know, Sue is organizing with this hosting and the candidate quiz. I think, you know, it's a great opportunity to amplify that and share it across our networks. Then we're going to try to bring together a conversation about doing a small action at the end of April on the 27th, which is the in solidarity with the Axe Drax campaign on the Drax AGM, but that will link with Peel Port and other groups, and, you know, maybe something around air pollution, maybe with a joint leaflet and a bit of a small action with a group coming together at the port. And then I think the next steps will be to get the conversation going on future joint actions. I've got possibility of emailing all the people who have registered to this meeting, so I will circulate a summary of what's being discussed with the resources and some of the ideas. Maybe a bit of a suggestion about, we've got the Clean Air Day coming up in June. That could be quite a nice focus for something. So I suggest that I write to all the people who have registered with a summary and ask them if they'll be interested to do a follow-up meeting, maybe next month after we've done the different actions that have been talked about, and take it from there. Does that sound like a bit of a plan?
Yeah, good.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, we're coming to the end of our 90 minutes as well. So just checking if there is any last thoughts or contribution that people want to come in before we part.
I've got a quick message to Kate Fuller. When you dropped out, I posted a link, I don't know if you saw it, on San Diego, the port of San Diego, and how they've restricted traffic. It's in the chat.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks, I'll go back to it.
Okay.
The one thing I will actually just say, I don't know whether anyone has seen the latest where Rimrose is actually up to. So there was some proposals put forward for sort of different alternatives to a road. So people quite often ask us, well, you know, if there's no road, then what's the answer? And the answer is like, it's the 21st century and there's a lot of new sorts of technologies being used in other ports across the world, like Shanghai is one of them. There's a few different ports and they use different technology. One of them is overhead transfer. So the containers come in on the port and go onto an overhead transfer. They move to a loading bay elsewhere, you know, and loads us onto HGV. So basically, it takes the heavy goods off the road. And another one, which is sort of more interesting to me is an underground freight solution. So basically containers again would come into the port, go underground on like magnetic levitation, you know, using that kind of technology, and be again transferred to a sort of a loading hub. So, you know, there are sort of alternatives being put forward and being explored as well, really. And there does need to be something, because obviously you can see for yourself as you look across the skyline, the port's expanding. There's new cranes popping up all the time. You can, if you know, you live in them areas, there's HGVs rattling along the roads all the time. So, you know, there obviously does need to be something done. And up until quite recently, it was like, well, the only other option was like an underground tunnel for HGVs, but it doesn't really take them off the road. So it's called ARA report. I'm on my phone, so I can't quite get to it without fussing about it, but I can send the link on afterwards. But the report was called ARP, AURP, and that's on our Rimrose Valley page if anyone wants to look further into that.
Yeah, and if you want to WhatsApp me afterward, I'll make sure I include it into the summary.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
No, I think that's an important point, and I was thinking about that the other day when, you know, there's so many HGVs on the road. I mean, it's creating so much pollution, but it's also like damaging roads. So then we're investing more money into roads when we need to actually invest money into different areas. And, you know, I was thinking about the mode of production of our consumption society, which is about just in time, is like a lot of companies produce goods, but they don't store them anymore. They actually store them on the road in those lorries or in those, you know, ships, and it's constantly moving. So it's avoid for them to have to like store merchandise. And, you know, this is like a system that, you know, cannot be sustainable at all. It's a mode of production that we can't sustain. Absolutely not. And if we were producing more locally, you know, whether it's like manufactured goods or, you know, food, and, you know, having like a more sort of closed loop production system can help reduce this type of need for transporting, and maybe beneficial for our air, but also, you know, for the planet, and help us to tackle climate change. So I think it's quite important that when we talk about air pollution, we don't forget to also make the link with climate change, and the fact that those parallel crises are actually linked, and the sources of those problems come from, you know, a certain production system, a certain transport system. We need to find, you know, sort of global solutions, and solutions that encompass all those issues. But just to conclude, I think air pollution is something that people worry more and more about. I went to walk on the Ouglets a few weeks ago, and I was interviewing a few people there who were using the Ouglets as a recreational space with their kids. And, you know, when I asked about air pollution and climate change, one of the fathers was immediately like pointing out to his little lad, you know, he's got asthma. And I think that people are concerned about that. They're concerned for their children. And I think that's, you know, something we need to talk about to get them involved into our movements. Because if we get more people involved, then that's where we will be able to shift, you know, the direction we're going to. So my focus really is to get more people involved, more people equipped with those arguments, because if we can have this critical mass on board with the movement, then we will make a difference. And so, yeah, onwards. Not always easy, but I think it was absolutely great to hear about everybody, and everybody's like involved in different campaigns with the limited time that we've got. But it's always great to see you again. So thanks so much for coming tonight, and expect a follow-up from me quite quickly about the extracts. I've been in touch with Kate and Katie in particular, but also about the summary of tonight and ideas for the next steps. So hopefully we'll resume this conversation quite soon, and looking forward to get some of the links from Sue as well about some of the action you're organizing in the next few weeks. So thanks everybody, and have a lovely evening. It's 8 o'clock.
Hang on. Yay.
Ninety
Nice one.
minutes is the limit on Zoom. Then we all need to go.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.